Hello, 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 Mecca family. My name is Shaylin Scott, founder of Book Mecca, an online Black bookstore and literary resource for all things Black lit. Every month, we try to bring a breakthrough author, someone who has a voice and a story that everyone should hear. And so this month, we have a very special treat. You guys had a full year last year of authors from across the globe that was amazing. And so we are kicking off 2022 in style with a very fabulous author coming up next. I want to introduce you all to her. And while we are doing that, make sure to share, like, subscribe, tell all of your friends and family members. You can go to bookmecca.org or follow us on Facebook and Instagram as well and catch the replay if you miss it today. We know everybody is busy, has lots of things to do, but we hope you can join us. So, without further ado, I want to introduce our special author for today. Her name is Jayne Allen. Jayne Allen is the pen name of Janique Seeley, a graduate of Duke University and Harvard Law School. She's an avid traveler who speaks 3 languages, has visited 5 continents, and drawing from her unique experiences as an attorney and entrepreneur, she crafts transcultural stories that touch upon contemporary women's issues such as workplace and career dynamics, race, fertility, modern relationships, and mental health awareness. Her writing echoes her desires to bring both multiculturalism and multi dimensions to rich and colorful cast of characters inspired by the magic uncovered in everyday life. She calls the Black Girls Must Die Exhausted series the epitaph of her 30s. A proud native of Detroit, and she currently lives in Los Angeles. So let me welcome Miss Jayne. Oh, I think you're on mute. There we go. Now you're unmuted.
Okay,
All right.
okay, hi, how are you?
Great, great. You know it. We've been in COVID so long that mute button still gets us every time. Every time.
I mean, the mute button.
That is
I
all
see.
right. Well, I am so happy to have you with us today. And for everyone who has not seen the book, I'm going to go ahead and show it to you so you know exactly which one to pick up if you haven't done so already. Here it is, right here. Oh, can you
Oh,
see it?
lovely. There you go. That's the
Black
cover.
girl. Yes, Black Girls Must Die Exhausted. When I first saw your book, the cover drew me to it before anything else. And I
Mhm.
guess we're just going to dive right in because I have so many questions and I doubt we go through all of them in an hour. But let's start
Okay.
with the color and the images on it. What was your inspiration for that?
I wanted to the title is so kind of in your face. It has so many different dimensions, and I wanted to give a sense of what the story was about, which is really about life, and it's really about perspective on life. And it is meant to go it's a little bit of a wake-up call about going from surviving and I'm fine into thriving, and a kind of call to thrive and seek fulfillment. So I wanted to give the emotion of that with the cover, which meant vibrant colors, a feeling of life, a feeling of excitement, a dynamic feeling. And so that was one of the directions, one of the important directions. And then also the representation on the cover. That's not meant to be Tabby, the protagonist. It's just meant to be representation of a brown skin Black woman with her
Yes.
hair texture. So as the
Oh,
series progresses, the hair texture changes, but I just don't feel like we see that a lot. How often do you go? I kind of think of book covers as like little mini billboards, and how often do
mhm.
you see a billboard that has a brown skinned Black woman with natural hair texture in the
Yes.
midst of just beautiful surroundings, and just in the midst of beauty and positioned in that way. So that was just important to me, to have that and to be able to see that. And when you see the book cover, that's what you see. And so those were the things in the forefront of my mind, inspiring the cover.
Well, I love it. And they say don't judge a book by its cover, but I did when I saw this one. I was like, oh no, this book is coming with me. I don't know what it's about. Didn't even read the back of it.
Okay.
was like, yep, this one is coming. It called my name. And it's funny that you mentioned that you don't see images like this that often on book covers. And I think that's a big reason why as well that there are so many women that I know, even on Instagram, on Facebook, all around that are sharing the book and sharing it and talking about you should read it before they even read it. I mean, they haven't even opened the book and they're like, you should read this. I'm like, okay, have you? Not yet, but I'm going to. It's the book
I know.
club book.
It's been incredible, and the community for this book that it attracts, the people that it attracts, and it has been really a I mean, it's gone across 5 continents at this point, and I just think that's so important to say, which is so. It centers a Black woman. It centers the story of a Black woman. It's not a story about race. It's her perspective, and I think that's really important to know that it's not this, kind of thing that we've heard here so much about race, and we've done that a lot. But what it is it is centering her humanity and validating her perspective as a Black woman.
Mm,
And I think that is really important to know that that's happening, around the world, that people are coming to this story and understanding that we're reading from a Black woman's perspective, and that means that it's important as a human perspective. And that's a small thing, but it's so radically different. And I
yeah.
think to realize that we've been constantly asserting our humanity and the validity of our perspective, and we're in this space now where that's starting to happen, and that it's just something to celebrate. So I'm excited about this. I'm excited to see the community continue to grow, and I'm glad that people are enjoying the book.
Well, I'm loving it. And there are so many. I know myself when I was going through reading the book, I kept thinking, I know her. I know who Tabitha is. I don't know if Jayne has met some of my friends or, but I feel like Tabitha is a little bit of someone that we all know out
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
And that is what makes her character so endearing. And even pretty much all of the characters throughout the book, I was kind of like, yeah, that's so and so. I see that. Yes,
Even Mark. I know a lot of
even
readers are
Mark,
not big Mark fans, but
even Mark, and Mark was one who my first impression was I'm here in Texas, so some of the dating scene is just not that great. So some of the guys are called transition men, in between life changes, in between homes, in between choices, just transitioning through life for years. And I just kept looking at Mark like, yeah, that's you. I don't want to tell the whole story, guys. Read the book, everybody. Read the book for sure. But you'll know what I mean when you read about Mark. Yeah. Yes.
yeah. Well,
Well,
I'm rooting for him. I still root for him.
and I'm waiting to read the next book. I wanted to make sure I talk to you first before the next book. I
Okay,
dug
okay.
into for
Yes,
sure.
Black Rose must be magic. Yes,
Yes,
absolutely.
yes. And I'll make sure that everybody knows what that looks like so you can go out and get that book too. It's already out. So everybody
Yeah.
can get it. But something that there were quite a few points within the book and I kept underlining things that I really enjoyed and parts and quotes and uh sayings that some of the characters had. And there were a few. Um, One that kind of caught me was in talking about representation in the news and telling the full picture. Was that why did you choose that career for Tabitha?
So I really had to think, what kind of career would she have? And it seemed like because of her childhood and the things that happened, she's somebody that needs to feel seen in a sense. She falls into that space. But also for the story, it served a couple of purposes. One is that her job is to be seen and also to see. Her job is to see. And that's something that's really, really important. And the stories that she sees are not necessarily going to be the stories of the conventional rest of the newsroom or her colleagues, because she's not, that's the representation
Right.
black of Black people in the newsroom is not high. And And then also, because she's seen and there's this, and that's part of her job, the societal expectations upon her in particular are magnified.
Mm,
So we get to examine that through Tabitha because she experiences what we all experience, but for her, it's amplified. So that gives an opportunity to really examine them, and see them in a magnified way, so that we can really take a look. And for some people that would it would gloss over. For her, she can't. So
yeah, her journey through her career path really touched, just thinking of your friends and everybody who's really trying to move to that next level. And you have this game plan in your head of what you should be doing, how it should work. And it's never quite what's in your head, it's always a little bit different, but it works out. Did,
right.
it definitely works out. Was uh, did you draw from some of your personal experiences or from your friends and family? And if so,
Absolutely.
could they tell?
Well, the funny thing is that some of my friends thought it was them, like
Oh,
spot on, like certain characters were them. And I was like, what? One friend was so mad at me. She's like, you put this part of my life in your book. I was like, no, I didn't. Like, I wasn't
see?
even thinking, like, I completely forgot about that. And no, that wasn't at all what was on my mind. And it was a funny moment. I was like, this is so crazy. Like, I'm like, oh my gosh, people in my life are going to like project themselves into this
Yeah.
friend was like, I know that's me. And I'm like, no, it's not, but they're bits and pieces, but it's a good sign, that people
Mhm.
see themselves. And even people I haven't met, they're like, well, were you reading my diary? Were you reading my journal? And I'm like, well, no,
Yeah.
certain, it took me a lot of perspective and years to do the internal examination to just try to understand
Mm,
what is the cause and effect of people's behavior, and what are the effects that the societal expectations and these experiences have on a
mm,
person, and these different journeys, and why do we do the things we do, and why does it take that way. So the fun part was using that understanding to construct these characters, and then put them into play with each other, and put them into play with the plot, and then see what happens. That was the fun part about it. And one of the things I realized with these characters is that, one of the worst things that women say is, I'm fine.
mm.
We get into that space, especially black
Yeah.
women, like, I'm fine,
Yeah.
I'm fine. And like, of course we're not, but that's how we operate. I'm fine. And so the amount that I had to throw at these characters in the plot and circumstantially to push them past that point of being
Mm.
strong and having that facade into where we could finally get into vulnerability and finally start to really see who these people are.
Yes.
That was a lot. And so that taught me a lot just in general about what everybody's carrying, including myself, that
Mhm.
we really have that kind of strong facade ingrained in us, and it's there.
Oh,
It takes
yeah.
to get past it, but what's on the other side is just a very raw vulnerability, that deserves to be acknowledged and protected and cared for. So I hope that this story shows that.
Oh, I think it definitely does. I wish I had you on right before the end of last year. We had a panel series talking about the strong black woman and the myth of that, and we had Miss Marita Golden, and we had some community experts come on and just talking about that narrative and how everyone you, especially the ones you call the strong friend,
Yeah,
those are the ones that probably need the most. They probably
yeah,
need a little bit of relief and guidance, and just watching Tabitha's journey go through it all, even on the pages, and she's a fictional character. It's
fictional
it's like
character.
I want to hug her.
Yeah.
I want to say it is okay. I kept wanting to tell her through the book, you don't have to do this. It's really not that bad.
But we go through those journeys, and I think understanding the internal experience of things, and seeing how we also, individually to varying degrees. For Tablet, like I said, a lot of this is amplified, so we can take a look at it. But all of us, are carrying what I call like the invisible backpack,
Ooh.
and the weight of these, experiences with us. And it's stressful. It's a lot. Our
Hmm.
shoulders,
Oh
it
yeah.
has to have strong shoulders for that. But it's like, but let's unpack this backpack. Let's take off some of that weight. Let's let some of this go. Let's
Yeah.
acknowledge it and take it out and put it outside of the back. We don't have to carry that. And so I hope that that is somewhere in the story, and that idea
Hmm.
starts to spark that, maybe I don't have to carry all of this, and just acknowledging that.
Absolutely. Something I've interviewed quite a few different authors, and they all have uh, different ways when they start the writing process or what gets them engaged. And some had certain characters they liked, certain ones they they enjoyed writing. Did you
Yeah.
have any of that push and pull with some of the characters in the book?
I liked writing everybody, and I was really curious about Mark because I find that there are a lot of Marks, and now as with the story out, and I talk to readers, you're like, Mark, okay, I know Mark, I'm everybody,
I'm married to
uh,
Mark. Yeah.
but but I wanted to unpack his humanity and explore that, and I think a lot of times people in real life give up on each other at a
Mm,
certain point way before these characters do, and then you miss the opportunity to find the humanity in that person. It's like, well, he's tripping, he's trifling, or he's
yeah.
whatever. And it's like, it's so painful for me. All I really want is separation from this person. And
Hmm.
you don't get to the point of understanding the core humanity of this person, or why they're this way, or what's going on, or what traumas they're carrying that are causing this behavior. This is the external experience is really a reflection of something else. And some
Yeah.
people stay too long, but I just really wanted to find out who he was, and use the story in part to give him a human perspective. So he got on my nerves. I was very annoyed with Mark, as I'm sure a lot of people,
Yes.
but I was really invested in knowing him and giving him his humanity in the story as well, and giving him his dimensionality too. But I
Oh,
love writing Miss Gretchen. That she was the most fun, and Mark was the most interesting.
yeah. Miss Gretchen. I kept thinking. I kept trying to place her in my head. Who do I know? Some spunky women, but none like her. I kept thinking, I want to know Miss Gretchen, but I don't know her yet. Maybe she's still out there. I hadn't met her yet. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. I was looking for Miss Gretchen too.
Now, when you were writing your story, have you always wanted to be a writer, or were you inspired by something? Said I have to write this.
That I ask myself that now that I'm in this space and this is very much my life, and I'm like, well, okay, maybe there are things I should have paid attention to. So I think I've always been a communicator. Even,
Mm.
like I started speaking
I can
evidently when I
see
was
that.
6 months old. So like my mom told me that my first word was light, and I was 6 months old. I
Oh
said that,
wow.
that word. I know. So I'm like, so there's always been that for me of communication, and I would write things as a kid, and but didn't pay attention to it and didn't think, oh, maybe that's and getting into school, I would start writing song lyrics and poems when I should have been paying attention in class. And ultimately, when I graduated from law school, you're supposed to write a research paper. I wrote a screenplay.
Oh,
Yeah, I
okay.
mean, there was some flexibility in what you could do. Um, and but for the one thing that stuck with me was how I viewed writing and books. And I always believed that people put the best parts of themselves into
Hmm.
books. And when I would go into bookstores or libraries, I always feel like I was bathed in this like golden light of
Ooh, I love that.
positivity and inspiration, and somewhere on the shelf was what I needed. It was an answer to a question that I had, or the encouragement or inspiration there. Something good was there for me. And so I'd always find myself going into bookstores when I was looking for something or needed that encouragement or whatever. And so in my mind, I thought if I ever have something good I want to say or do, the
Mm.
book is the place to place it.
Ooh, write that
And
down. That should be encouragement to all the future writers out there. I mean, just that's beautiful. That really is, because it truly makes you think like there are so many beautiful and awesome stories that exist and life experiences just in one place. Just pick up the
yeah,
book.
yeah, pick up. I mean, there you can travel, you can learn, you can grow, and with these stories, what I'd written nonfiction before, and that was about lessons I learned through my career. I've had a very interesting career and life journey up to this point. It's been very fortunate. I've been very blessed, and
Yeah.
so my give back in each moment where I felt like, okay, there's a something interesting I've learned. I wrote a nonfiction book about it. I wrote a nonfiction book about social media and brand development in like
Okay.
2012. And I wrote a book about resilience. And
Ah,
I published that in 2016, something like that, or 2016. And
mm-hmm.
then, but then when I decided I really wanted to do something, it was I had this idea in 2016 because of how I was feeling as a Black woman at that time. I
Yeah.
felt unprotected. I felt unseen. I felt uncelebrated. And I wanted to do something. I was worried that other people, especially other Black women, were feeling that way. That
Mm.
this environment's heavy. That the feeling unsafe, feeling seeing the issues with the police brutality at the time, seeing the issues of misogyny and women's rights issues, and calling things into question, and
Yeah.
then
Really
just being
familiar.
waking up Black, in
Hmm.
America, and having to internalize what that means, that you're going to have a different experience that is not fair, that's not on par with non-Black Americans. Like, there is an actual Black experience in this society that is disadvantaged in many ways, like in and thinking about that just on a day-to-day basis, the weight of all that was a lot. And being and just the messaging in society, that you're not as attractive, or you're this or that, or Black women are more likely to be
Absolutely.
single. It was just all this mad that you just crap, and I was like, this is too much, and it's not true, and I want to be celebrated, and I want to celebrate Black women, and I want to acknowledge us for all of the things that we
Yes.
do and who we are in spite of. Because I'm like, in spite of this, we are amazing. We are hilarious. We are colorful, beautiful, loving, smart, loyal, great friends, lovers,
Yeah.
sisters,
All
cousins,
that.
and
Yes.
successful. I mean, if I'm in a pitch and I'm in the boardroom or something, please send in a
Make
Black
way.
woman. That's how so I'm like, who's celebrating this? And I was like, well, I want to do that. I want to write something, and I would do it in fiction that would feel like that hug, that celebration, that I see you, and in the book it's in there, that just loving on us. And so that was what I set out to do. I'd never written fiction, but that was my goal. That was what I wanted to create, something that was an experience that you could go into when you open this my book. You're loved on, and no matter what's happening in your life elsewhere, you could go someplace, or you could have that and carry it with you, and it would always be there, and it would always be that. And that was what I was hoping to create.
Well, I
And
think you did it.
so
I
thank you.
definitely do.
Thank you. So that was the goal, and that was what sparked me to want to write this
Well, the love is there for sure. And even listening to you talk, I can see some of you in the characters now. I'm
book.
like, oh, okay. Yeah, that's a little bit. That's
It's
that's a
all,
little bit Mark.
yeah, across the board is a little
Yeah,
bit.
not Mark though. I'm not even gonna give you that. Not Mark.
No, no, but I've met some marks. There's yeah, so
Yes.
more than one.
Something.
We're enough where he's a representative character.
Yes, he takes on I know we have a whole conversation about Mark.
But
That's a
yeah,
whole nother show there. Just have a
I know.
whole show called Are Which Mark Are You?
I know.
But there's layers. Which one?
Right.
I digress. Let me get off of Mark. I'm sorry, Mark. All y'all out there watching. But there was a part in the book. I'll read it here. It's on page 49 where she says she might be the only one in the room with the platform to amplify the stories that shape the lives of forgotten people. And
Mm.
just what you said alone, it kind of felt like that's exactly what you're doing. You are giving a voice to every woman in the boardroom, every woman who is trying to move up that ladder, who is facing someone who is stepping over them, talking over them, silencing them, ignoring them. You are giving them the voice that life happens and you can still do it.
Thank you.
Everything about so I kudos to you for sure. In your first fiction novel,
Yeah. No. Yeah.
keep going.
I well, there's a lot of stories to tell, but I was just so clear in what I wanted to do. That was the most important thing to me. I that was the most important thing, was that I wanted it to be that, being seen, feeling seen, and that this was, I was really worried. I mean, that was, that time worried me a lot, and even now, that we have a lot that we're carrying, and we need a place, we need a celebration, we need to be acknowledged. We need to know you're not crazy, you're not crazy, sis. That is
Yes,
happening,
yes.
like we call it microaggressions, but it's real, and so just that, if I could have, that was what I wanted to accomplish first and foremost, and whoever needed it, it would be there, and that was what I wanted to happen.
Oh yes, I hear you, Miss Tony. Yes, give us a minute to sigh. Just, woo.
Yeah.
Sometimes 5 o'clock doesn't come fast enough,
Right.
and you're there like, I gotta look
Understand.
at you. Especially in the world that we're in now, which is this Zoom virtual space where you kind of feel as if you're on all the time.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's very hard to maintain that. Like, how has it been for you as an author where you're not able to be out and about and engaging with people, talking about the books, but you're in this kind of space more so than anything?
It's funny that you asked me that today, because I was like, on today, I was walking my dog and I was talking to my neighbor, and I was like, this is, I've had 4 interviews today,
Oh
and it's,
wow.
yeah. I'm like, I think that's a lot.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's that's the privilege of this role, that I have to tell the story, I have to shepherd the story, I have to make sure that people know that it's there,
Mhm.
and that's part of it. So there's a different energy when you're in person. You can feed off of other people's energy, and but when it's virtual, you have to just show
Yeah.
up and generate and be present and be on. And the good thing about this is I just feel so passionate about this book, and I get fed by the audience. I'm
Mm.
very present and on social media, people are just so encouraging, and that there's always something to feed off of. Even there's sometimes when I don't feel like writing or whatever it is, and then somebody sends me something on a random day, and I'll read the note, and they're just say thank you, or I felt
Oh.
seen, and that just fuels my tank. Like, okay,
See?
I'm so clear why I'm doing it, and it's for other people, so that each time I tell the story or I'm talking about it, I just continue to keep hold in my mind who it's for. And
Mhm.
it's not for me, it's for other people, and that there's fuel there. So I'm looking forward to being in person, and but it's nice to be able to go. When I in the pandemic, I sometimes would be in Tennessee on at
Mm.
12 o'clock, and I'd be, or I'd be in London at 9 a.m., and
Oh my
Tennessee at
goodness.
noon,
Yeah.
and somewhere else on the West Coast later in the afternoon. So that's kind of cool to be able to travel the world and meet people from all over the world, from one place. But
Mhm.
you do have to find that energy, and I think it's a little bit different doing this than it is for having to do it for work,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. And I like how you mentioned just pulling energy from places that you didn't even expect to get that energy from. It reminds me of the character in the book, Miss Tabitha, the
Yeah.
ones who gave her, to me, the most encouraging words and the most gung ho. I'm right behind you. Were the characters you were thinking, I didn't even know you liked her. Like
Yeah.
I thought there was going to be a turn
Yeah.
where one of the characters would have been mean or said something just outlandish, but they were the ones who were, you can do it. You don't
Mhm.
have to do it all. We're behind you.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
that is so refreshing.
Well, I had to make sure that it was authentic and from an authentic place. And she has an unexpected work ally. I think you're talking about Lisa.
Hmm.
And the way that Tabitha experiences her, because I think Lisa's a little bit much, Lisa's
Yes.
white, and she has a perspective of her own, and it's just like, and she's just like, well, here's the women's
Too
issues group.
much.
Like,
Right here.
why aren't you doing, why aren't, like, come on, like, yeah, of course you should be doing this. And Tabitha's like, yo, I have other issues. I got things I'm worried about. I am not trying to fight this battle right now. And she's like, why not? And because she doesn't have to fight this. She's not carrying this. Her backpack's not
Yes.
as Tabitha's is. And it takes a while for Lisa to understand that. And so I had to really examine Lisa as a character and ask myself, why does Lisa care? Like, why is she there? Why is she an ally? What is she?
Yeah.
And that really took an examination in the character development. So I have to know that as a writer to write that, because I don't want to write something that's not authentic, that I really want people to be able to come into these books and trust the experience of what is being portrayed, that they know I did the work of the character development, that there's a why behind what everybody does. It's authentic, and it's not just like thrown in there as a plot twist. It's not, there's no
Hmm.
plot that has to do with the characters. The plot's there, and the character's reaction is individual to each of those characters, but I
Yeah.
don't use devices. So it's kind of unique in that way, that it's not like, oh, here's this, one dimensional character that comes in that's meant to just be, you know, uh,
Yes.
villain. Like, everybody has the fullness of their humanity, or they're intended to. So,
Hmm. Hmm.
even allyship and those experiences in the workplace.
Yeah. I kept looking at her thinking, because of course I have my mental picture of what I think the characters look like in my head, but I kept thinking, this that one coworker that is happy every morning, just every morning before coffee, they're happy. I'm like, oh my God, go
Like,
away.
my yeah, but
Go.
she's interesting as the story develops, where Lisa, I'm working on the third book right now, and there's some things going on with Lisa. Like,
Mm,
she's got her complexities. So it's been
oh,
just interesting to get to know these people, and I mean, there's something to get to know, so I enjoy that.
okay. I'm looking forward to that. Okay. Huh. Well, there's so many different things within the book that I really liked. One was Miss Gretchen, of course.
Oh
Miss
goodness.
Gretchen said, "A man that ain't got no plan, but you ain't your man." And yes, I did it in my country twang because
Yeah.
that's the sound Miss Gretchen has in my head. He ain't got no plan for you, baby. It's just did you get a lot of feedback from women when you uh, were out and about or talking about the book, women that read it in book clubs? How did they react to Miss Gretchen?
And Ms. Gretchen is, I think, everybody's kind of go-to person. And I love that about her, because I just love her spirit. I love that, she's kind of this YOLO woman, has gotten to that place and has
Oh,
the life perspective, has the receipts, been there, done that, has had the
still doing it.
sure, and it's still doing it. And I just love that about her, and just that having her energy and her as a resource and her perspective. So yes, I saw that when I see like the highlights on social, or people put in quotes. I saw that come up quite a bit. uh,
Yes, I
somebody
wrote
said,
down quite a few, and I was like, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna use that. I'm gonna use this one too, Miss Gretchen." She's the one to just call you to the carpet and just,
yeah.
yeah, I'm gonna use that, Miss Gretchen. There was another part in here I liked. It was this one was more so from another one of your characters. I'm trying not to tell y'all all how the book is and who everybody is. You got to read the book. Go get the book and read the book. But
Meet everybody, meet everybody.
Yes. One of the characters says, it's like she's been absorbed by her own life, like there's no me anymore.
Mhm.
And so even though you had Tabitha who has a full career, you had layers of other characters that were mothers, that were single, that were having mental health issues, that had all kinds of things going throughout there.
Mhm.
Did you did you have to kind of balance between going down the rabbit hole with one character versus the other? Because they each seem like they could have their own story, their
Yeah.
own book.
Well, I did a lot of character development in
Mm,
writing this book. Like that was my, if I have to say that's my art, when people make portraits, like visual artists, like they're portraiture artists and they make portraits of people. I make characters up and I texture into them and I create people, and so that's, and then I put those people into situations and scenarios and let them play out and try to take us all past the point that we would all normally go in everyday life so that we can learn something about ourselves. And so it's really important to make those people as fleshed out as possible and fully formed as possible and find the textures and the little quirks and the tidbits and the issues. So with each of them, and it was my first novel, so I didn't know where that would take me or take the
hmm.
story, but it did allow for so much richness, and it's just so authentic. I mean, even the smallest thing that happens winds up being something of consequence because this unique person is going to react to it or do something, and it's like, oh, I didn't know she was going to do that, and then, so that's kind of fun discovering as a writer, like they're very much formed, and it's not, I can't push them
Even
in
the
any direction.
kids.
Yeah, they all have they all have perspectives. So that was a lot of fun, but um really investigating them and who they are and why they're like this. And Alexis, she got married very young, and she's very invested in her Mrs.
Yeah.
And so
Miss
that,
Thing.
yeah, Mrs. Thing, right? She's very invested in that, but and we see, and that's something that we see on the surface, but what's underneath that? And underneath that, like, why is she so invested in that identity? And then what does that really mean? So that was really interesting to unpack who she is and why is she doing that? Because I think in life we would just be like, oh yeah, that girl, she's annoying, like
Yeah.
that's just, but we don't really usually ask why. We just experience it, put a label on it, and kind of shove it and file it away, and put it in a place where she didn't get on our nerves too much. But in this story, I was able to give her the fullness of her humanity and understand, like, yeah, she's kind of annoying, but why, what's she going through, like what's really behind that? And asking that question about the characters was really one of the joys of writing this, for me at
So with all of that character development, is that why it's a series of books? It was just too much to put in one book.
Let's put in one book. There's just more story, and I think it could go on past the trilogy. There's other perspectives, and what I realized too in writing this, it's from Tabitha's perspective. It's a first person narrative, and I try to show everybody's. Which is why there's so much that has to happen to break people down into their vulnerability, because otherwise you would never really know what was behind that,
Mm,
facade.
yeah.
But um, but each person's perspective would change the story. And I think that's something important to know about fiction and literature anyway, and why it's so important to have diverse voices and
Hmm.
representation for stories. Every story, if you change the perspective, if you change who's telling it, it's going to be a completely different story. And
Yeah.
I could redo this entire series and tell it through Mark's perspective, or I tell it through Laila's perspective or Alexis's perspective. It would be a completely different story.
Hmm.
So that's just something to know, and that I realized about this. And I'm probably not gonna do that, but maybe, so there's a lot more to do.
No, yeah, you could.
Characters are there. This the as long as the characters are fully formed and developed, there's a lot of opportunity.
Yeah, yeah. But there were a few characters that I would like to see. This is my personal opinion. I would like to see have their own book. I would love if Miss Gretchen had her own book. And I kind of want to know more about Tabitha's mom. I, I
Mhm.
was sitting there like, what is her story? She seemed a little angry, but I
Yeah.
was like,
And she
yes,
so yeah.
yes, it's rightfully so. But after so long, I'm like, why are you still angry? Something else is going on here. I want to know, like, you got a whole nother man, but okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm telling you all the
Yeah.
tea. But it's really
Well, those
good. Really good.
are just little nuggets. But yeah, in
Yeah.
the third book, there's some really fun, interest. Well, I won't call it fun. I'll say it's been fun to write, but it's been really interesting. Tabby and her mom spend some time together, and it gets real deep where we
Mm,
learn a lot more about her mom, and so those scenes have been really fun to write. To that some of the characters that we want to spend more time with. In the third book, we are we're visiting with them and learning a little bit more about them. So that
all
wish does get granted.
when does the third book come out? Because I already got the second one.
Early, yes, February 2023 is what we're scheduled for the
Okay.
third book. Yeah,
All right.
so I'm pretty excited
Okay,
about that.
people. Finish these books
Get
so
ready,
you be
get
ready.
ready. I know.
Be ready. And I'd love to have you back for
Oh, thank you.
shoot all of them,
We'll come.
honestly. All of them. There was the title itself, you mentioned that it's very intriguing and eye-catching, and it's mentioned a couple of times throughout the book. Could tell us a little bit about why this title was the one that stuck.
So when I was thinking about the title for the book, I wanted a title that told its own story, that felt like somebody had said it before. That it wasn't like something that it felt like somebody just made. It felt like it was an old saying or something, or it just had that kernel of truth. You know, like old folks say stuff, and it's just like
Yeah.
it's so true, but
Yeah.
it's like where did that come from? You know. And so I wanted a title like that and could encapsulate that and go somewhere. And so I was looking for a word that was reflective of how I was feeling and that I could take somewhere, and maybe was reflective that would connect viscerally with the experience, especially of the
Yeah.
time. And that word was exhausted is exhausting.
Ooh,
You think about the weight of the layers, it's exhausting.
ooh,
And I just heard that echoed so much, so I realized that that was kind of the anchor for the title, and I had to take it somewhere. And so, you know, the with the word dying, it has nothing to do with death, it has to do with life. It has to do it's meant to call to mind the experience of a lifetime. Over a
yeah.
life, what is your word going to be? And with the title, you know, you
Ooh,
wake up to what word are you living right now? Like, even if you never read the book and the title winds up being a wake up call, like, well, you know, am I exhausted? I don't want that
mhm,
to be my word. Great. You know, then you've had an experience, and that experience hopefully is beneficial and takes you somewhere, because the idea of the story is going from surviving to thriving. That's what Tabitha's doing, that's what the story
yeah.
does. And so that was where I wanted to go with this title, that it starts as an acknowledgement, like, you know, as with all of the weight of everything over a lifetime of that, and even thinking about generations past, like
Oh goodness,
generations, like
I can't
the,
imagine.
you know, like the a lifetime of this, a lifetime of
Mhm.
this, like what does that equate to, and then how do we change that? And so that's what the titles, as you read the story, it goes through transformations, and it means different things at different times in the story, and it's presented in different ways. And finally, at the end of the story, it's a call to that finding your fulfillment and thriving. So if my goal was, if you hear the word or think the word or hear somebody say the word exhausted after you read the book, it doesn't mean the same thing.
Yeah.
For you, it's a reminder of to about thriving. It's a reminder about, are you seeking your fulfillment? And you know, we're in this experience, but are you seeking your fulfillment? So
Mhm.
that's my goal with that.
I love that. That's beautiful. And it definitely fits with all of the sentiments I've been reading online. It's been like, oh my God, now I need just to get my life together. I need to work on this. I am inspired to do XYZ. Just
I love that's it's like so beautiful to read those. I'm like, oh great,
that
so
is. And the
yeah.
crazy thing is, at first when I saw it, and even though I had already gotten the book, I was like, is this a self help book? Is this one of these? Is it a journal in it or something? No,
Yeah, no.
not.
No. But
It's
it's a
the story.
journey. There's a journey in it. It's not
Yes, it
journal.
really is. It is. Well, there is a few others in here that I'm definitely gonna steal for my life words around here. One in particular, and I know we have a little bit of time left, so I'll try and get to it. Uh, was about black representation, and you kind of mentioned on the title and the cover and the characters themselves being fully developed, but there's a part in here where it says that blackness not a color but a culture.
Mm.
Now that was a word for me. That is so true as to
Mm.
why we are up. I think there's a song that just came out that says everybody wants to be black but not be black. Just
Right. Right.
because it's so much more than just simply acknowledging a race. And when Tabby talks to her grandmother and asks her, would you want to be black? And grandmother asks her, would you want to be white?
Mhm.
Those weren't the answers I was expecting. Well, a little bit, but not quite
Mhm.
what I was
Mhm.
expecting. And it kind of made me question that as well too.
Mhm.
Did you ever kind of, as a black woman growing up in a going to schools or going to colleges and the whole life experience, did you ever have those same type of internal conversations with yourself? And who did you go to for that kind of guidance? Did you have a Tabby as well, a Tabitha?
I didn't. I mean, I never even asked myself those questions until I wrote this book. I
Mm,
was thinking, I never thought, what is it? What does it feel like to be black? I hadn't really thought. I just been living it. And
mm,
so, I never thought about it. And so in writing it, I had to write it for Tabitha, but I was really intimidated for myself and thinking about writing this because I was like, well, are people going to think it's representative of everybody's view? Because everybody, I can't speak for everybody. I can't write for everybody. And so I had to remind myself, look, it's just two people in a room. It's just Tabitha and her grandmother, Granny Tab. And all you have to do is write from Tabitha's perspective. And I had to just remind myself that and say that over and over and over again. And uh, there was something I came across. I can't think of her last. She wrote "The Body Is Not an Apology." Sonia.
oh, now I know who. Now you want
Yeah.
me to look it up, but I know who you're talking about.
Okay, but you know her book, and she does these Instagram videos, and she said something. She said that culture. You think of culture as a survival technology for like I'm paraphrasing, but you
Mm,
think of culture as a technology of survival for societal conditions. If you think of culture as a survival technology, and I started thinking about blackness and black culture as a technology of survival for the spirit,
yeah.
that in a culture of oppression. And what has evolved, what black culture is a survival technology to keep your spirit alive. And I'm like, oh, that was this moment. I was like, whoa,
Wow.
and thinking about it in that way where the experience of blackness, the creation of blackness as a race, it's a societal creation that society treats you in a certain way, creates oppression, and the history of what blackness has been as a societal creation has resulted in a survival technology created of culture, of
Mm,
black culture. And I
mm.
was like, that if you think about it like that, I'm like, whoa, that was like
Ooh,
mind blowing.
yeah.
And understanding that we have created black culture to survive the oppressions, to keep our spirits alive in
Wow.
this experience. And so that's something to celebrate.
That makes me think. I don't even know who said this years ago. Is that being black was like holding your breath underwater. and you can't breathe until it's safe, which is your
Mm.
family, your
Yeah.
friends, and every other place you are, you're holding your breath. I was like, oh,
Yeah.
that's exactly what. Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
See, now you need a journal in the back for these
Maybe
moments,
it'll be a journal. I know, right? Yeah.
these
Maybe a
moments
journal
right
here.
here. Even there's a part of here where she's practicing in the mirrors. I see you. I love you. I acknowledge your struggle. I think you're beautiful. Even wrote that down in my own mirror. I said, "Oh
Oh,
yeah,"
I love that. I love
turned
that.
it into a journal.
I love that. I'm so glad. I just I put as much love as I could muster into this book and these books, this series. So
Well,
you know,
it is.
there's more to come,
It's
but that was
beautiful.
what I was trying to do.
Well, speaking of more to come, I want everybody to see, and even all of you lovely people who are gonna catch the replay, because I know you will. Uh, this is the next book you need to get. Black
Yeah.
Girls Must Be Magic. Make
Yeah.
sure you grab it. Grab them both. I think I read this book in 2 days because you didn't want to put it down because you were in on the story. And it's, if you guys, everybody who's watching, this is not a do not finish book. And there are plenty of them out. This is not one of those books. This is one you want to finish and you will enjoy it all the way through.
I'm so glad to hear that. I hope if people haven't been reading and they've been on the sidelines, like, well, there's not books that, because I
Yeah.
understand why you would sit on the sidelines, because there's not a lot of representation and sometimes books can be a little indulgent.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that this book will be engaging and encourage people to get back into reading.
Hmm.
And if it's a gateway.
Oh yeah. Now I know over the last year there have been some heavy books. I
Hmm.
mean some heavy on content, heavy on information, and even some that were just when
Yeah.
you read it. I There's a couple I've read. I had to stop reading for a minute because I couldn't get that feeling of just feeling down from the
Yeah.
story that wasn't even real.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this one didn't make me feel like this. I felt like I should still be able. I can still read because I'm gonna read the next one, but I feel like I should still be. It's airy. I put it like that. It's
It's meant to be that. And I actually was talking to Miriam Chauncey. She has a book, What Storm, What Thunder, about the Haitian earthquake.
write that down.
Yes, she's amazing. But we were talking about writing about life. She writes about a real life experience from a fictional perspective. There's fictional
Mm,
characters going through this real life experience that actually happened, and it's there's trauma in life. Like life, the reality of life is that life is going to be traumatic, and
mm-hmm.
so if you're writing about life tangential or life paralleling events, then there's going to be trauma in the book. But we were talking about our perspectives on writing about trauma, and we both shared this, we have a similar perspective. I don't write about raw trauma. I don't put raw trauma in my books. There's traumatic things that happen, but I do not write about unprocessed trauma. So if I
Yeah.
put trauma in the book,
Ooh, I
it's
like
something
that.
that I process through and that I know where I'm taking the reader. So if it's there's a down point or a traumatic point, there's a payoff. There's an
Mm,
emotional payoff. There's a dramatic payoff in the book, and there's not just raw unprocessed trauma for the sake of having raw unprocessed trauma in the book. Some people do that, some authors do that, but that is not what I've chosen to do, and I do not do that. So I do not write about things I have not processed.
have you gone to therapy? I feel as if you're speaking therapy. I am a
Yes, I
big
have.
therapy. I'm like always
Oh
go
my,
get therapy.
you know how people hand out breath mints? I'm like, have you been to therapy? I'm like, you want a Mentos and a number to a therapist?
Yes. You just
We,
mark
please.
therapy.
Yes, please. I will ask that on dates. I'm like, so do you have a therapist? Have you been to therapy?
And
So
no,
I'm
I cannot be your therapist for you. That does not
no,
count. Don't
I am
take my
not.
note.
I feel like I almost had to get a master's in psychology to deal with some of the people that I've dealt with.
Yeah.
Like, but I'm like, this is not my job. This is not my
Hmm.
role. So I'm like, do you have a therapist? Is one of my first date questions.
See, I like that.
Yes.
That's a good one. Oh,
Mhm.
well, I know we are coming up on our time, and I want to be definitely mindful of your time for sure. But one
Yeah.
of the things I always do towards the end of our breakthrough series is I like to end with a quote. I usually pick uh, a black author who is phenomenal, doing some great things. And I was reading your stuff, and it's you. I said, "You, oh no, this is your quote from
Okay.
you." And it is, there is a need for more diverse voices in literature with the freedom and leeway to write undiluted perspectives for more diverse audiences. And there's more, because I can just leave it there. We don't just need more diverse books, we need more diverse perspectives with the expectation and acknowledgement of a more diverse audience. Jane Ellen. And this is from her words, her own quote. So you guys
Such a reader.
definitely go get the book, go get all three of them. Follow her. Make sure to continue and encourage and share with your friends and your neighbors. And thank you so much, Jane, for joining us today. It has been a pleasure talking
Thanks
with
for
you.
having me. This has been fun for me too. So thank you very much.
Oh, I love it. Anytime you want to come back on Book Mecca or anything at all, you just let me know when you're in there.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
You have a great one. Thanks.
Okay,
Bye,
you too.
Mecca family.